Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of I Do Everyday Automation, where we talk about home automation projects to make your home smarter and your life easier. Today, I want to show you guys, as promised, how to set up email and text message notifications in the Blue Iris NVR software. We're also going to show you how to set up motion tracking as it relates to the red rectangles that track objects across the screen. And also, I'm going to show you how to eliminate certain zones or areas of the camera so that you don't get false recordings, like if a car's passing or a dog's walking up the street, if that camera isn't intended for that purpose. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in.
Alright guys, so today we're going to work on a couple of things, including alerts, different camera profiles, and notifications when you're away from the home, when you're at home, or just for any different type of the day that you want to set schedules or different alerts per camera or for the entire system. So let's go ahead and dig in real quick. The first thing we're going to want to do is set up the SMTP server, which is basically just setting up the emails so that they can go out to different notifications, whether it be an email account or via text message. So you're going to want to go, first of all, into your email account of choice. And actually, for my home cameras, since Google is free and it seems to work with just about all of the systems, I actually set up a separate Gmail account just for the cameras to send notifications and alerts from. And obviously I'm not going to show you how to do that. Hopefully you guys have already covered that. So you're just going to go ahead and go into the Google account, and you're going to click on sign in and security. And from here, you just want to make sure that you have allow less secure apps turned on. So that's why you create a separate account that has nothing to do directly with any of your important information. For example, like I said, this account is just for my cameras. So with that turned on, you can now go into Blue Iris and actually set it up to where it can authenticate through Google on your behalf. So you're going to go back into the Blue Iris software, and you're going to click on email servers. You're going to click on add and just give it a description. And since we're using a Gmail account, as you can see, it's set up for AOL, Windows Live, Yahoo, and Zoho. Or you can do user defined if you want to set up a separate account for a small business or something of that nature. But since it's Gmail, we're going to go ahead and go with that. It automatically puts in the SMTP server for Gmail. And then from here, you're going to put in your name or your default domain name for the email account you're using. And you can see secure connections already checked and authenticate's already checked. So we're going to go ahead and put in the login name. This actually is secure. It's just that with Google, a lot of the times it asks you to authenticate if you're logging in from a new device. And since there's no secondary menu for you to authenticate as you would if you were just logging into the regular Gmail app on a browser, there's no way for it to prompt you with the additional steps that you need to take to give this device access. It's actually for the secondary login from an unknown device. And then you're just going to give the computer a name. And this can be whatever your computer name is, or if you have something else you want to use, just to identify it, you can do that at this time. And you're just you can either test it, I already know these settings work, or you can just hit OK, just to go to the next step. All right. And as far as the email server part is, you're done with that. There's a couple other little options here I want to show you guys real quick to further tweak these settings. You can go into mobile devices And you see here I have a couple of devices that are authorized on the account for different reasons. I have the Amazon Echo, I have the NVIDIA Shield, I have my wife's Galaxy Note and my Galaxy S8. I can actually set these devices more specifically. Let's say you have a kid and you want to make sure when they get off the bus in the afternoon that the camera starts recording to make sure they make it home. So you can actually set, let's say, your front porch camera to activate anytime this person enters a geofence. So it'll start, you know, you can have presets for that. And this is one way to trigger that, is to say, okay, whenever this person enters a geofence, I want to set a quote unquote traffic signal for a camera. When they enter the geofence, I want the living room camera to turn on or something to that effect. Or more importantly, for my home, I don't want the living room cameras on or the personal room cameras on unless there's no parties in the house. So I have mine set to where when my wife and I leave, when both phones are gone, then the living room camera and our daughter's bedroom camera and the garage camera will turn on. So I can set those traffic signals to green. And I can also tell it to set a schedule. You know, whatever schedule, and we'll cover that real briefly here in the next portion, whatever schedule you guys want to set. Or you can also tie it to a profile, which would be very similar to setting a schedule, because you can, inside the profiles, you can set different schedules. For example, the work hour schedule, which means, you know, from these hours, I want this to happen on this camera. So the profile kind of ties, you can do camera selection and schedule selection in the profile, but we'll cover that here in a second. You can also tell it to trigger a specific camera to turn on. You can also tell it to send you a push notification to let you know your kid's home. And you know, you can view the camera to make sure they get in safely, nobody follows them, so on and so forth. You can also tell it to run an executable, which is pretty cool. If you know someone's coming, you know, from out of town and their device is linked with your account. I do this with my in-laws often. So when they get to the house, they punch in their code. Because they've already entered the geofence, I can have it set to where once they enter, you know, jazz music will start playing. It'll turn on certain lights so they don't have to worry about portions of the home automation. So those are all different options you can do just for the phone, which aren't directly necessarily tied to the camera security portion, but you can do different things to actually tie it into that. Okay. All right, so now let me show you guys the schedule that we talked about real briefly. So again, you can create a preset schedule and name it something other than default, because the default's the one that runs all the time. And you can say, okay, on these days, I want profile A, B, or what have you to run. You can say fill the day, or you can use a little magic wand just to select portions of the day that you want to include or exclude. Alright, so now we'll go to the cameras and I'll show you guys how that works. So you're going to right click on the window of the camera, you're going to go up to camera properties. And here's where you can actually trigger the alerts to actually send notifications to your device directly. So you're going to click on alerts. And as you can see here again, you have another option to add this camera to a certain profile. So when this camera's in profile 1, I want it to fire this camera specifically when triggered to do so on or so forth. I can set the different motion zones, which will say, okay, when something enters this zone, I want you to record specifically. I can also make it sound an alarm from the computer if I want. Some of the similar options that you saw in the other one. The ones we're more interested in is send a push notification to mobile app, send an SMS text message, and send an email message. So on the NVIDIA Shield or the Amazon Echo, you can actually say send a push notification to mobile app. When you hit configure, you can select a notification. and then it's going to test on the device, whatever devices you have selected. And I'll show you guys that here in a minute. Once we get a couple of the other parts set up, I'll do a little front door trigger, and I'll show you on my phone and possibly on one of the other devices how the trigger works once it's actually activated. So we're going to go ahead and select the front door camera, since that's going to be the easiest one to configure and to get motion from. We're going to go into alerts. Actually, we'll take a step back. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the phone and the other two devices are checked. Check that, hit OK. So they'll receive the push notification. Go into camera properties, go into alerts, and we are going to say send a push notification to mobile app with the default sound within 1 minute between the alerts being triggered. So that means if you go in and out the door within a minute, it'll only be triggered one time. You can adjust that up or down if you want. If you want to make it to where it's not, you know you're going to be going in and out a lot, you can turn that up to like 2 to 3 to 4 minutes to where it's not triggering every second when you go in and out the door. But for the test purposes, we're going to leave it at a minute. All right, I also want to say send an SMS text message or send an email. So for some of you, send an email, because with email you can actually send an email to a phone as well with a little quick hack. If you know the carrier's preferred method for delivering text messages, which all carriers use a predefined format, you can actually put the recipient's phone number and then add whatever the suffix of the preferred SMS text message setting is. So for T-Mobile or Sprint or AT&T, you can actually go to this guy here, and I'll post it in the description below. And for now, I'm not going to change any of these other settings. I'm just going to leave them as is. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. As you can see, since we're doing the email, you can actually attach an MP4 video as well. Just going to hit OK. And if you have a telephone modem, or if you have like a SIP device or a PRI line configured, if you're a small business or something, or even if you have a VoIP at your home and you have it linked through your PC or your network, you can actually configure that on here as well. Okay, so one other thing I want to show you guys is something called the area of interest. And to get to that, you're going to go to video, and you're going to select area of interest. You got to hit edit. So if you want to make sure you don't get false positives, you can actually configure this for all of your cameras, and you can just select a portion of the screen. So only what's in the portion will be what's considered the area of interest, and will be the only thing that's triggered, so you don't get false positive readings from people just walking in front of the camera, or walking a dog, or what have you. And that way you're only focusing on the areas, as you can see here, that constitute something that you want to catch. So for us, we know pretty much anything within this sphere here means that someone's approaching the front door, which is what we're more concerned with from this camera. The street camera will catch everything else with pretty much varying degrees of certainty. There's a bit of overlap. So for notification purposes, we want to make sure this area is selected. All right, so then once you select and set all your settings, the camera is going to reset. And there we go. All right, so one other thing I promise you guys we cover is the motion trigger, which is basically the rectangles and the tracking. So for the front porch, we want to make sure that motion sensor is checked to on. You can click on configure here. And again, you can select the size of the object that you want to track. You can also black out whatever area you mask. So if there's parts that you don't want recorded or things that you don't necessarily want to come across the screen, you can turn it on here. You can also turn on use zones and hotspots. And here again, you can set different zones for this camera. You can create different zones to, like we saw in the previous screen, that trigger different actions. You can also set what's called the hotspot zone. And obviously for us, if this was the doorbell camera that I'm going to show you guys soon, I would just select the field around the door. So that's going to be our hotspot zone. And for the tracking rectangle, all you have to do here is turn on highlight motion or show object in rectangles. Or you can do highlight and rectangles. All right, and that's it. Now we are ready to try our notifications. Alright, so there's a couple of different options with the notifications. As you can see right here, this is just the standard text message / email notification through Blue Iris. Next, I'll show you guys how the notification center looks. So we're going to go ahead and go into apps. And you can add this to your favorites bar if you want. And for the sake of the video, I'm just going to show you from here. And you see right here, it just shows the message with date and time, and that it was triggered via Blue Iris. We can go into the notifications here and see a couple of other notifications that I have that are worth note. And here's a notification directly from the push notification feature in Blue Iris that is triggered on the device from an earlier time. I just wanted to show you guys that it can actually show you a picture as well. It doesn't just have to be just the standard text like this. So you kind of have both options there. Whatever you prefer. If you don't want an actual image to pop up on the screen, you can go with just the standard text.
Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. I tried to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. In the next couple of episodes in the series, we're going to close everything out. I want to do one more episode on the Blue Iris software and some of the other features that you guys can enable. I also want to do a video on a doorbell I picked up that is very reminiscent of the new Ring doorbell without the monthly subscription. So with that, you can also add the notifications that we showed today to get a subscription-free service, but still get some of the features that you would with a more expensive doorbell. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, Go ahead and give me a like and subscribe to the channel so you can see more videos whenever I add them. Other than that, I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks, everybody.